So next, we're going to assess cranial nerve 5, which is the trigeminal nerve. And specifically, we're going to pay attention to this test because we believe our patient has trigeminal neuralgia. So what you do with this test is you're going to have something soft or dull, which is, I'm going to use the end of a Q-tip, and something sharp, which is going to be the end of a paperclip here. And you're going to, with the patient's eyes open, you're going to say, this is dull and this is sharp. So they know how to identify it when you ask them to identify it, because during this test, you're going to have them close their eyes and you're going to run either sharp or dull. You're going to kind of keep that part hidden to the patient so they can accurately identify whether you're rubbing the Q-tip or rubbing the paperclip. Now in this patient, even if there's something dull run across the right side of his face where he's experiencing the pain, we could provoke the pain caused by trigeminal neuralgia. So I'll kind of run through how we do this. Okay, so we already identified what's sharp and what's dull. I'm going to have you close your eyes, and when you feel me touching you with either the dull or the sharp, you're going to identify whether it is dull or sharp. All right.
Sharp. Sharp.
Is that painful?
Yeah,
Okay.
that hurts. Soft or dull. Sharp. Sharp.
Does that hurt?
Yeah. Soft.
That's soft and it still hurts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so in this patient, cranial nerve 5 revealed to us that anytime that we touched them either with dull or sharp, it brought upon that pain again. Okay, so then we move on from cranial nerve 5, and since we already hit cranial nerve 6, we're moving on to 7, and that's assessing facial movements. So you're just going to ask the patient to raise their eyebrows. You're going to ask the patient to smile and then to puff out their cheeks. All right, and that's cranial nerve 7 right there. And then cranial nerve 8 is auditory acuity. So you can do this one of two ways. What's quick and easy is you can ask the patient to close their eyes, and you can rub your fingers by their ear and ask if they can hear that.
Yes.
You can do it on both sides just to make sure bilaterally they can hear it correctly. And make sure that their eyes are closed so they're not anticipating hearing something. Okay, cranial nerve 9 and 10 can be done at the same time. And how we do this is by assessing the gag reflex. I don't have a tongue depressor on me right now, but you would just ask the patient to open their mouth, stick up their tongue, and just touch the back of their tongue with like a tongue depressor. And if the gag reflex is stimulated, then those cranial nerves are intact. Next, you're going to do cranial nerve 11, which is the accessory nerve, and all you're going to do is assess for strength of the neck and shoulder muscles. So all you're going to do is you're going to ask the patient to try to shrug their shoulders against resistance, and if they can shrug their shoulders against your resistance, then you know that cranial nerve 11 is intact. Finally, rounding it out is cranial nerve 12, and that's the hypoglossal nerve. And all you're going to ask them to do is stick out their tongue, and as long as it's midline, it's not going to one side or the other, that cranial nerve is also intact. All right, so now we're at the end of our neuro exam. We're going to just quickly go over, we're going to be testing the patient's muscle strength. We're going to be doing deep tendon reflexes. We're going to be doing the sharp and dull sensation on his upper extremities. We're going to be testing his vibratory and position sense. We're going to do some cerebellar tests, and we're going to assess his gait. And that will be the extent of our entire physical exam. So first I'm going to start with muscle strength. You can do this one of three ways. You can do active range of motion, where you're going to tell the patient to, for example, can you go ahead and flex your arms towards your shoulders? So that's active. The patient is doing it for his or herself. Passive is me doing the motion. But to really assess the strength, this is more assessing their actual range of motion if they can do the motion, but to assess their strength, you're going to want to do resistive range of motion. So you're going to tell the patient instead to raise their hands towards their shoulders, and if they can put a considerable amount of resistance against your hands, then their muscle strength is intact. So we just did his elbows. So if I tell him to bring his arms up here and try to push against my hands, bring them down, that's extension of his arms. We could also do his shoulders right here. So I'm going to tell him to bring his arms away from his body, bring his arms towards his body, Bring his arms up, bring his arms down, and that's gonna assess his entire range of motion of his shoulders. We already did his elbows. You can do it of the hands here. You wanna stabilize the wrist joint and tell him to bring his hand down, up. You do that bilaterally. You'd also wanna move down and do the hip. This table isn't sufficient enough for him to lay down, so we're gonna skip the hip. You would wanna test abduction, adduction, and then flexion, and then extension of the hips. We can do his knees though. I'm gonna ask him to kick his knee out against resistance and then bring it back against resistance. I would do that bilaterally. And then you can't see the ankles, but you would also ask him to dorsiflex and plantar flex both of his ankles and test his muscle strength there. Moving on, we would do deep tendon reflexes. You want to make sure you have your reflex hammer. In this patient, you would want him to, we want to start with the triceps tendon. You want to have him relax, bring his sleeve up, and you're going to want to you want to relax all the way, and you're going to want to take your reflex hammer and see if you can get any movement here. I want to make sure that he relaxes all the way. This patient has, there we go. Okay, reflexes. You want to do that bilaterally. So you did the triceps tendon. Now you want to do your brachioradialis tendon, which is going to be right here. You're going to want him to just relax as much as he can. His reflexes are kind of terrible, but you're not going to get great reflexes in everybody. So you would assess the brachioradialis. We already did the triceps tendon. And now you're going to want to do your patellar tendon. Again, he's in jeans. I'm going to just like show you how you would do it. You'd ask the patient to just relax. His reflexes aren't the best. He's shown this before, so you've got a little jump there. You do it bilaterally. And then also, since you can't see the feet right now, you would take the ankle and you would hold the foot in your hand and your forearm, like kind of like this. You would have the patient relax, and then you would hit the back of the Achilles and see if you could get a reflex. You would do that bilaterally. That's the extent of your deep tendon reflexes. If you guys didn't forget yet about the soft and dull sensation, how we did it on his face to assess cranial nerve 5. We would also do it in his upper and lower extremities. I'm going to show you how we're going to do it in the upper extremity, but you're again going to identify on the patient somewhere. This is dull, this is sharp. You'd have the patient close their eyes. And then on their upper extremity, you would ask what sense, or what is it, sharp or dull?
Sharp.
And then you would go down and assess if they could still feel the same sensation on their on the lower part of their upper extremity. You would also assess a dull sensation just to make sure that he could identify, is that sharp or dull?
Dull.
And you would go down to the lower part of the upper extremity to see if he could assess if that is the correct sense, is that sharp or dull?
Dull.
You would do that on the other extremity. You would also proceed to do it on the lower extremity. Since our patient couldn't get fully undressed today, we would do it on the upper part of his lower extremity and the lower part of his lower extremity. Same idea of how we did the upper extremity. His vibratory and position sense. So this is an important part of the neuro exam. So you would take your vibration tool here. You would activate it and it vibrates. You'd ask the patient to close their eyes and ask if they could feel the sensation of vibration.
Yes.
You would do it at the elbow. Then you would also do it at the first MCP right here. Do you feel that?
Yes.
You do that bilaterally. Ask if they can feel that.
Yes.
Ask if they can feel it.
Yes.
Okay, and then lower extremity, you would do it at the knee. You feel that?
Yes.
You feel that?
Yes.
And then you would do it at the foot, at the base of the first MTPA joint. Do you feel that?
Yes.
Do you feel that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's vibratory. Position sense, you're going to ask the patient to close their eyes, or open their eyes, look at what you're doing to their thumb. This is up, this is down. You're going to ask them to close their eyes and move it up and down several times, and then stop, and you ask, is this up or down?
Down.
Down, okay, so then you would do that on the other thumb bilaterally, you would do it on the big toe bilaterally, assessing their position sense. We then move on to assess their cerebellar function, and we do this a couple of different ways. We're gonna show you how to do it. We're gonna ask the patient to, let's have you keep sitting for right now. You're gonna ask them to put their finger on their nose. You're gonna hold your finger out, and you're gonna ask them to touch your finger and then to touch their nose. Touch your finger, touch their nose. Touch your finger, touch their nose. Touch your finger, touch their nose. So if that's intact, you know that there's no deficit of their cerebellar response. You're gonna ask them to do what we call rapid alternating movements, also known as RAMs. You're gonna ask them to place their hands like this and to go rapidly alternating their movements and see if they can close their eyes and do this. And if they can do that with no problem, again, there's no deficit. Another way to do that on the lower extremity is they would take their foot and they would rub their heel against their shin like this, again with their eyes closed, to see if they can adequately do that without any problems. Okay, now I'm gonna ask the patient to stand up. We're gonna finish our exam. So this next part actually is gonna more assess their proprioception more than their cerebellar response. So what we're gonna first do is the Romberg test, and all they're gonna do is they're gonna hold their hands out, they're gonna close their eyes, and if there's like any drifting, that's gonna indicate possible dysfunction of their proprioception. Also, we do pronator drift with his eyes still closed. You're gonna just hit their hands, and if they're not gonna be pronating like this, then you know that that's also intact. That's pronator drift. Then the last thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna assess their gait. I'm gonna ask the patient to walk from where he's at right now to the other side of the room in a heel to toe fashion. And as long as he's doing that without completely falling over, then we're good. Okay, walk back. Heel to toe, heel to toe. Okay, so with that, that's going to conclude our neuro exam. And in the accompanying document, you're going to see that we believe that this patient has trigeminal neuralgia, and we're going to also outline, I guess, like our assessment, how we came to that conclusion, and our treatment of this patient. But that concludes our physical exam of this patient. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you learned a lot from it.
Thank you.